Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast IDP edition. I'm Jon Macri, and today I'm going to go over some of the top IDP takeaways from this Sunday's worth of games. Now, I'm recording this right after Sunday Night Football, so if there's any Monday morning injury stuff that comes out or anything like that, then I won't necessarily be up to date there. There also won't be like Monday Night Football stuff in here yet if you're listening or watching this like after that game, for example. But ultimately, want to get you guys this information as early as possible to make sure you can attack week 2 with the proper context. I'm also going to leave out Thursday Night Football, the Friday night game as well, since that's basically old news now. I've covered it on Twitter already, what seems like weeks ago. Plus, the IDP Fantasy Report will be out on Tuesday morning, and I'll be sure to drop the link for that in the episode description once it is there. And then that will cover the full slate of games and every IDP from that week. From this week, I guess, with all my thoughts, waiver wire targets, snap alignments, all that kind of stuff. And in my opinion, it's going to be like the most important article you can get to for IDP this season. So make sure you're going to check that out because it's got everything you need for IDP all in one article. So without further ado, let's get into our week 1 takeaways, where there is always a ton of new information to pour over and a number of things to surprise us. And we had a hell of a slate of games here in week 1. There's so much to discuss. I'm going to lean heavily into the linebackers for this one, just because there's so much information from the linebacker cores across the league here. And I'll only include maybe a couple other positions at the end there, most likely guys that might be available on your waiver wires too. So, but again, IDP Fantasy Report every Tuesday. That'll have my thoughts on every game, every position, everything you need. But for now, let's talk some linebackers. Going to talk some maybe risers and fallers here after this week's first week's worth of games. Starting with the Minnesota Vikings linebackers. Now, this isn't something that came as a surprise to us for anyone that's listened to the podcast since the first week of preseason games, when it was clear that Blake Cashman was going to wear the green dot. But we did get some confirmation of what the role will look like for our beloved Ivan Pace. And Ivan Pace, this was essentially the exact usage from last season, which is what we were most concerned about with whoever was going to wear the dot, or with whoever wasn't going to wear the dot, because it's also kind of the worst case scenario for that LB2 in Minnesota, in this case, Ivan Pace. So Brian Flores consistently took Ivan Pace off the field on obvious passing downs, either in place of an extra defensive back or a pass rusher. Now, this makes sense, obviously, considering, there's more value in those players defending the pass than a linebacker, but it sucks for IDP, specifically for Ivan Pace, who I know so many people actually drafted ahead of Blake Cashman this offseason, unless, of course, you listen to this podcast where we warned you about this. But also, he was off the field in plenty of other looks as well. So as a result, Ivan Pace played just 54% of the defensive snaps in this game, which includes the final garbage time drive by the Giants when the starters on defense for Minnesota left the game, and Pace played the lone linebacker role while Cashman was resting with the rest of the starters. Now, this is definitely concerning for those who drafted Ivan Pace highly. It's very likely going to be like a sub 50% role again for him this season. He's going to hover around that half of the snaps mark. That is not ideal. Like, he should not likely be started in most IDP formats, barring a Blake Cashman injury at this point. So Blake Cashman's the guy we want. Ivan Pace, not so much. Okay, one of the very interesting and potentially concerning usages coming out of this week's game surprisingly happened in Jacksonville. So Jacksonville has a new defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen, coming in. He was previously with New Orleans. And he deployed a rotation among his linebackers, which included Devin Lloyd, our reigning back-to-back IDP LB1. Foye Oluokun, not Devin Lloyd. Foye Oluokun is our back-to-back LB1. It's not good for Devin Lloyd either, but Foye came off the field more than expected, basically. Now, before I get into the exact usage, I do want to give a shout out to Brian Serrano on Twitter, who did point out that it's very possible that we saw more of a rotation this week, specifically because of the heat in Miami, where it was like 92 degrees Fahrenheit. I understand that's very hot from someone who lives in a Celsius territory, but that could very well be the reason for this usage, which saw Foye actually come off the field for almost 2 full drives while also having another drive where he was coming off the field on obvious passing downs. Now, that is concerning for me, and the kind of specific usage that he came off the field on passing downs, that makes me concerned that it might not be because of the heat, but we'll have to wait one more week here before going into full panic mode. So Foye still played around 92% of the snaps. It's not bad, but the point is that he was coming off the field more than he ever would last year or the years before, right? So just something to keep in mind there. He still had a pretty productive game. Now, same kind of issue for Devin Lloyd, but worse. Basically, he was coming off the field on a lot more of the third downs or obvious passing downs. And Devin Lloyd also sat out multiple drives for Chad Muma and Ventrell Miller. So okay, maybe it is just the heat if that's the case, but very much something to keep an eye on here into week 2. And if this continues, it will be more like stock down for Foye and especially for Devin Lloyd, who were projected for full-time roles this season heading into the year, even with a new defensive coordinator. Like I said, luckily, both those guys were actually pretty efficient. With Foye, I think he had 11 tackles. Devin Lloyd had 9. So that definitely helped us this week, but still something to be concerned about hurting those numbers as the year goes on if that usage remains the same. All right, let's look at maybe one of our first waiver wire targets of the week, and one for deeper leagues more than anything, but still an interesting name because he played an excellent game. Mack Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the highest graded players of the Arizona defense from week 1. Now, he wasn't a full-time player, so he isn't going to be like all that viable in shallow leagues, having played, I think, 62% of the snaps. But again, played really well and was someone that we talked about this offseason. I believe it was in the bounce back episode with Tripp, where we even said he's not likely going to be a full-time player, but could still be useful for deeper IDP leagues. And week 1, he's already highlighted that with a 9 tackle performance, one of which went for a loss, and then adding a PBU as well. So 65%, that's probably going to be about his average, but still decent again for those deeper leagues, especially if he's going to remain this efficient. Although a 24% tackle rate might be a little too lofty of expectations going forward. Okay, I want to remain on the positive side here for a second and head to Miami again, where these linebackers certainly weren't bothered by the heat or had their snaps affected by the heat, because both David Long and Jordan Brooks played 100% snaps in week 1 here. Now, Brooks was definitely drafted with confidence this offseason. Long was actually going after him more often than not. But I'll be honest, I didn't have as much confidence in Brooks being full-time when it was clear that Long was going to wear the green dot, only because we didn't know what to totally expect from new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, because we don't really have any reliable play calling data from him in the NFL until now. And week 1 was very encouraging with both guys not coming off the field at all. So Long was the much better tackler this week, but if this remains, both guys will have their games. Brooks has been a pretty solid tackler in the past, so not overly concerned about him just having a 4 tackle game here. Both these guys can be good with those kinds of roles. Okay, back to the shit usage. Let's talk about the Chargers, because I have egg on my face now. I know what you guys are thinking, John. You're never wrong, but you'd be mistaken. It does happen every once in a while, and it looks like Denzel Perryman is one of those players I maybe had a bit too much confidence in this offseason. Now, luckily, like, he wasn't drafted highly. He basically cost nothing in drafts, but still, I talked about him in our start sit show as well this week, because he was wearing the green dot in the preseason. They named him a captain on the defense. He was looking like he was set for a safe full-time projection. And then literally the next day, the news from Jesse Minter about all his linebackers likely rotating came out, and that turned out to be true this week. So the way it broke down was that these guys essentially rotated drives. It wasn't a situation-specific thing, just a literal rotation in every sense of the word, where sometimes it was Henley and Perriman, sometimes it was Perriman and Colson, and sometimes it was Henley and Colson. There were even actually 2 drives where it was just Junior Colson. This was nasty stuff here by Jesse Minter. So we're staying away here in most formats. Diane Henley played the highest percentage of snaps at 67%. Junior Colson 58%, Denzel Perriman 50%. So brutal numbers there that we're not going to love for Los Angeles, and we're going to stay away from that until it changes. Okay, let's get a palate cleanser now from the, that Chargers nastiness that we just went over. And we got some actual positive and encouraging usage from a team that I would not expect them to give us such usage. It's the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know a lot of IDP managers have been excited about the potential of JOK on a larger workload. And well, I was skeptical that we'd get that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was the only Browns defender to play 100% of the defensive snaps. This is the first time JOK has ever played 100% of snaps in a game in his NFL career. So a monumental moment, huge for his IDP stock. Now, Jordan Hicks was banged up coming into this game, so it's possible that the lighter workload for him and the full-time workload for JOK was due to that, but we'll take the next 24 hours to celebrate JOK's usage, and we'll get back to tempering expectations after that until we see it again in week 2. But JOK 100%, Jordan Hicks 72%. That's really, really encouraging for Owusu-Koramoah, but I would tend to want to see it at least one more week here before getting, too excited about it, I guess. All right, Dallas linebackers are up next. So Mike Zimmer coming in, and while we thought, we'd potentially see 2 full-time linebackers, it wasn't quite that, though there were essentially 2 linebackers out there on every play. It just happened to be different linebackers more often than we'd like. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that Eric Kendricks has a 67% snap share, but he was actually playing a full-time role. He missed a couple of drives due to injury, and then he sat out the last 16 to 17 garbage time snaps. So that affected his overall snap share to get that low, but there's really no concerns there because he was basically a 100% snap player when he was out there, and he had a huge game with 9 tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception. So we talked about Eric Kendricks on the Start Sit show as a start. Hopefully you listened because Eric Kendricks was amazing. We also talked about Damone Clark potentially, and for those deeper leagues, Damone Clark did not play the full-time role that we expected. DeMarvion Overshown was actually the LB2 for Dallas. Damone Clark was the LB3. Both of those guys rotated quite a bit. Overshown 58%, Damone Clark 34%. So Overshown will definitely be ranked ahead of Clark for me in weekly rankings now, and he could even be added in deeper leagues as a waiver claim. But Damone Clark essentially going to be useless in most formats. Tampa Bay linebackers are next. Now, this is a group that wouldn't usually get into, a recap with how they've deployed their linebackers in the past. It's been essentially 2 full-time guys, but this week at least showed us something different. So Levante David did play a full-time role as expected. No surprises there. The change in the linebacker usage came from how the Bucs utilized their second linebacker spot with Devin White now gone. Head coach Todd Bowles, he had talked up KJ Britt as being able to play all 3 downs this offseason, replacing Devin White, blah, blah, blah. Well, not quite, buddy. KJ Britt was taken off the field on almost every obvious passing down and third down, and he was replaced by Servassier Dennis on those plays. Now, Dennis had an incredibly productive game, considering he only played 21 snaps. He had 6 tackles and a sack. Do not chase that production. Unless you're in a crazy deep league, this is not sustainable production for Servassier Dennis on that snap rate. So just wanted to highlight that one here. KJ Britt, 66%, not ideal. He's going to be a deep league only option now. All right, a couple of quick hitters at linebacker. Start with a check-in on Ernest Jones in his new home with Tennessee now. This was another kind of as expected, but nice to get confirmation situation where we knew Ernest wasn't going to be a full-time player right away, and that's basically what we got here. He didn't come in until the 3rd drive of the game and played sparingly while rotating with Jack Gibbens as the LB2. Both Ernest and Gibbens will be on most benches now until one, most likely Ernest, emerges as a full-time player, which it could be a few weeks still, right? So Kenneth Murray, he wore the dot. He was the lone full-time linebacker, so he'll be a safe play for a bit. But we'll just monitor the Ernest Jones snaps, but we're not starting him until those snaps get up much higher. New York Giants. Okay, looking now, New York Giants are up here, aka the Montreal Canadiens, judging by those jerseys that they wore. But Bobby Okereke was the lone every down linebacker, and then it was Darius Mauso as the LB2 next to Bobby O. Now, I would say that we can pick up Mwasu, oh man, that name's going to kill me. We could say that he's a waiver target. He can be in deeper leagues, but it's also worth noting that Micah McFadden has been banged up and didn't play in this game. So Mwasu played 82% of snaps, had a pretty productive game. But again, Micah McFadden hasn't been healthy. He didn't play in this game, so it's possible that him not being healthy yet could be the reason Mausu's playing there. And when he's back, he retakes that LB2 role. Could be as soon as next week. But for now, Mausu would just be a speculative add in those deeper leagues. I can't wait to hear if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, which I'm sure I'm not. All right, Carolina linebackers. Little switch up here, actually, it seems. Josie Jewell wore the dot in the preseason with Shaq Thompson also in the lineup, but it does seem that Ejiro Evero has decided against that and put the dot back on Shaq Thompson. Now, it didn't make a huge difference in snap share, but Josie Jewell did come off the field a handful of times, ended up finishing around 93, 94% of snaps, while Shaq Thompson was 100%. We'll just be ranking Shaq Thompson ahead of Josie Jewell going forward, and probably someone that's actually on a lot of waiver wires, so I'd go take a look for that. He had a nice 10 tackle game, Shaq Thompson did, but Josie Jewell was fine as well. Can also be fine in most formats. It's pretty close to a full-time role there. Okay, Atlanta. This was a group that we did not see at all in the preseason, so it was kind of an unknown in terms of what the deployment will be, especially with a whole new coaching staff. What we got from the Atlanta Falcons was that at least one linebacker is a nice, safe IDP play here with Caden Ellis. He played 100% of the snaps. Unfortunately, the LB2 spot was a rotation with Troy Anderson only coming on the field on obvious passing downs, and then Nate Landman was playing the early downs. So I expect that to be pretty much their normal deployment here this season. We do see that from teams, and I think it makes sense with these guys specifically. So they're both really only deep league options, only Landman and Anderson, with Caden Ellis safe for all formats, basically. In Buffalo, Terrell Bernard, full-time as expected, but Dorian Williams played a slightly larger role than expected. He played 85% snap share, so Dorian Williams makes himself an option in a few more league sizes with that snap share, so that was encouraging to see from him. In Denver, for those who have Cody Barton on your roster, he's already now close to droppable. Barely played in this game. He rotated in and out with Christian Welch, who I've never heard of. Cody Barton also got cooked on a Seattle touchdown. This is very much a one linebacker team, and that one linebacker is Alex Kingleton, who delivered 9 tackles and a pick. Welch, not really worth rostering either, unless you're in like some 32-teamer where there's basically nobody on waivers. He should at least be an option for you there. I'm sure you could find him, and he's somebody that might get a handful of snaps every game now, and maybe eats into Cody Barton's snap share a little bit more as well. So Christian Welch is the name, lowering the stock of Cody Barton, but really, it's Alex Singleton is all we care about in Denver. The Seattle linebackers, we finally got Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker on the field together after not seeing Baker all preseason, and really encouraging usage from Mike McDonald with Tyrell Dodson playing 100% of snaps. Jerome Baker only missed 1 snap, so Baker also had 10 blitz attempts. Both can be solid options going forward with those snap shares, but Dodson definitely the one to value higher in tackle heavy. Let's go to the Sunday Night Football game here. The Detroit Lions, same usage as last season. There was talk, I think it was Colton Pouncey is talking about Jack Campbell wearing the green dot. That was not the case. Turned out to be baloney. A lot of just unnecessary hype here. Nothing changed from last season. Alex Anzalone, lone 100% snap linebacker, and then really just an annoying rotation among the rest. Jack Campbell did not play on passing downs or third downs all that often. Derek Barnes played the second most snaps next to Anzalone, played a lot on the edge as well, but that wasn't a full-time role. So pretty gross rotation there where Anzalone is the clear LB1. And then the Los Angeles Rams, welcome to Troy Reader season, baby. Confirmed here. So Ernest Jones is gone. And as we speculated, it was the Rams leaning on their veterans and not Omar Spates for those starting roles. Troy Reader was the lone every down linebacker, while Christian Roseboom played the LB2 role, which was around 74%. If Reader is still on your waiver wires, he is a must add in most leagues where you need full-time linebackers. Christian Roseboom can definitely be an option in those deeper leagues. So that's all the linebackers. I'll go through a couple other bonus names here. Just looking at the New York Giants safeties, rookie Tyler Nubin, who in the preseason, it wasn't clear if he'd be a starter or not. He ends up being the lone 100% snap safety in this game, though Jason Pinnock was pretty close as well. Dane Belton barely played. So big stock improvement for Tyler Nubin. He can be added anywhere where he's available and you're in need of a full-time safety, basically. He had himself a nice game. So nice to see for Tyler Nubin. And then the other name on the waiver wire on the defensive line, just to get one of those in there. But again, there will be a lot more in the IDP fantasy report. Keon White of the New England Patriots. Now, New England was in need of a Matt Judon replacement, and they might have found him in the form of second-year edge Keon White, who played 41 of 51 defensive snaps, so a very healthy 80% snap share, which led all of the New England Patriot defensive linemen. And he happened to deliver 2.5 sacks while he was at it, so a monster game for him for IDP. Right now, unreviewed, 90.2 defensive grade, so really looked good and impressive while doing it here in year 2 and should definitely be in consideration off waiver wires right now. Okay, that's going to do it. I really hope you all found that helpful. Just a quick, kind of recap of the week that just happened here Sunday, just to kind of get that out there, get the information to you guys as soon as possible before the IDP fantasy report, before the IDP start sit show that comes out on Thursday. So that way you have all the information that you're looking for, and it gives you a couple waiver wire options here as well. And then again, I will link the IDP fantasy report into the episode description when it comes out on Tuesday. But again, hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, all I ask in return is that you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel or leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening on audio. Those types of things really help a ton, and I definitely appreciate them. I also want to shout out the PFF data collection team as well, for whom this data wouldn't be possible at such a quick rate. Legitimate rock stars and the best team in the multiverse, as always. So again, feel free to ask questions in the YouTube comments as well. I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. But I will be back later this week doing a full Week 2 IDP preview with my good friend Bobby Reynolds from the IDP show. That'll be out prior to Thursday night football. Again, be sure to check out the IDP fantasy report when it drops on pff.com on Tuesday. IDP rankings will be up by Thursday morning at the latest. And until next time, peace out.